All right. I thought I'd get you all started off tonight with a little bit of a different Christmas movie. And yes, I do consider Die Hard to be a Christmas movie. Just so you know, I am one of those people. And if you need to take a look at it again, there is Hans Gruber. And there's Bruce Willis, John McClane. One of my favorite movies. I'm a child of the 80s. And I happen to believe that it is a Christmas movie. Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie as well, as in my opinion. And so that's why I wanted to start off. Last week it was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This week it's Die Hard. So I want to welcome everybody tonight. Andrea, how are you doing? Barb and Lee and Sherelle and Kara. How's everybody doing tonight? If you missed it, I started off with a little Die Hard on the TV. You know, it's really weird. Like 15 minutes, my allergies have been good, my sinuses have been good, and then about 15 minutes before the show starts, I start sniffling and sneezing. I just don't know what it is. I should have taken an Allegra pill probably an hour ago. Too late now. So if I'm sniffling and sneezing a couple times, please forgive me. And I welcome you all to, hey, Kara, wrapping presents. I got my Christmas shopping done yesterday. Welcome to the show. Beautiful day here in Madeira Beach, Florida, getting a lot of work done. If you don't know, we have 2 episodes this week. Yes, 2. And we're going to be talking about them, as I usually do later in the program. Talk about both of these young men who disappeared 47 years apart. So those will be the 2 episodes this Friday. It's a gift from myself to the listeners. I know a lot of podcasters take this time of the year off for very good reasons. For me, I got nothing else to do, so I might as well work. And so I managed to put these interviews together, the episodes together, and you will get them both at 2 o'clock Eastern Time in the United States on Friday. And then there's Diane, who jokingly, what do you do live feed? Jokingly, Diane had asked me about maybe, what was it, half hour ago, Diane, 45 minutes ago. She asked me when the love feed was going to be starting, and I didn't want to get into that. I did not want to even get into that. It was a typo. Very funny, though, Diane. Very, very funny. I got a good chuckle out of that. And Barb, you're welcome. I'm guessing you're thanking me for the 2 episodes this Friday. You're welcome. It's the least I could do, and these families certainly deserve these episodes to be out there. And so if they're willing to talk, I'm willing to interview them and put the episodes out as soon as I can, even if it means doing that over the holiday season. So there you go. The shirt I'm wearing tonight is Jim Thorpe. That's the shirt. If you didn't know, it's one of the few places in the United States that is named after a real person, both first and last name. It's in Pennsylvania. I've never been there. My parents have been there, and they got me this shirt. So there you go. Jim Thorpe, and I have no idea what the 1953 means. Established 1953. There, Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. There you go. Dee Dee, welcome tonight. Kelly, Bobby, I hope you're all doing well. Kelly from Western Pennsylvania. I hope you're all doing great. I wanted to first start out tonight talking a little bit about Florida's Missing Children's Day. Hi, Angela, from last week. If you remember, I went to it the day after this program last week. That was last Thursday. I drove up there and watched the ceremony. It was about 2 hours. The first part of it was honoring of private citizens and people in law enforcement who have helped in the finding of children, the catching of sex offenders. That was the first part of it, them receiving some plaques. Then a couple children were honored for writing about how to keep children safe. One was a poster. A girl did a poster, and then the other one did an essay. They were there. And then the last part, honoring of 12 children who have disappeared in Florida over the years. And I'm not exactly sure how they pick those kids out. But Peggy and Patty McDaniel were two of them. Of course, that's a case that we covered on Unfound back in April of this year. And I got to meet for the first time Joyce Rivituzzo. Her husband was with her. And it was good to meet her. She's just even more fantastic in person than she is on the phone. Hello, Mrs. K. How are you doing tonight? I see you. Thank you for joining us tonight. But she got to sit right up there at the front with these other families, and they were escorted up to the stage with this honor guard, and it was very, as I stated last Friday on my on the episode in the news section, that I'm man enough to admit that I got quite choked up. I'm man enough to admit that, and you just feel for these people. Some family members of all these children are there. I got to meet some of those people. I talked to them before, and then I got to talk to a couple of them after. So it went about a couple hours long. It was outside under a tent right in the courtyard between the old Capitol in Tallahassee and the new Capitol in Tallahassee. And I would say there were 100 people there. I'm going to say there was a lot of news people there, a lot of police there. And they had the pictures of all of these kids up on the stage at the front. So it was very sad. It's just very sad. But the good news about it is that I think, at least regarding Peggy and Patty's case, it's a ceremony like that is going to give their disappearance a lot of attention. And I definitely got that feeling while I was there, that I saw several people come up to Joyce and tell them that they're not going to forget her, and that they're not going to forget about Peggy and Patty, and they're going to do everything they can in 2018 to bring more attention back to that case. I actually saw people say that to Joyce. So, and then Joyce said to me, and whether this is true or not, I have no idea. But she said to me that probably, she doesn't know if Peggy and Patty get recognized in this ceremony had Unfound not covered the case back in April. Whether that is true or not, I have no idea. But for her to even think that, for her to even say that, is quite something, and that also choked me up, as you can imagine. So I drove up there 4.5 hours. I didn't sleep very well. I ended up leaving like 3:30 in the morning, got up there way early, but I'm really glad that I went. It was a beautiful day, although it was a little chilly. And there was like a lunch afterwards where I got to sit and talk with Joyce and her husband for a while. And then I drove back. I got to go up to the top of the Capitol building in Tallahassee, a really nice view up there of the entire city. And we just sat there and chilled, for about an hour after the ceremony. So I'm hoping some good things happen for Joyce and her family in 2018. Maybe you might be interested. One of the other young people who were honored, who disappeared, and this name might not off the top of your head ring a bell, but the young man Trenton Duckett was honored there as well. Now, if that doesn't ring a bell, you might remember that back in 2006 when he disappeared, his mother appeared on Nancy Grace. And Nancy Grace went after her pretty hard, I would say immorally and unethically, in my opinion, as a reporter. Okay? And then the next day, Melinda Duckett, the mother of Trenton, allegedly committed suicide. She was found dead, and the belief is that she committed suicide. But I have to tell you, there are a lot of differing opinions out there to that. But Trenton was honored last week, and his dad, Josh, along with his mother, were there. I didn't talk to them. I didn't meet them or anything, but they were there. So that was somebody else that you maybe might know simply because of all the national attention that got. And Nancy Grace ended up getting sued by Melinda's family, and family ended up winning. There was a 6-figure sum, I think, that Nancy Grace or her insurance company or whatever had to put out because of what happened. And I still believe to this day that Nancy Grace was wrong. All right. And that's why one of the reasons that I don't particularly have a lot of respect for Nancy Grace. I've talked to maybe a couple listeners about this before. This is probably the first time I'm saying it publicly. But I understand that maybe Melinda did something to her son, but the way she went about it was totally wrong, in my opinion, as a reporter. And you've heard me interview a lot of people now. You know what I do. The goal is to solve the case. The goal is not to belittle somebody on national TV, and I think that's exactly what happened in that case. And it might have led to Melinda's death. But like I said, the death is a little bit up in the air. Dee Dee, you asked, do you plan to cover the Trenton Duckett case? I do. I can't say any more than that. I want to do it, but that's all I can say. That's really all I really want to say at this time. I would love to make that happen in 2018, but I can tell you that if I do it, it's probably going to be in a little bit different way than how that case has been covered to this point. All right? That's all I can really say. That's all I feel comfortable saying at this time. So there you go. Just the intro of the show. Went up to Florida's Missing Children's Day. And I would urge you, if you live near a capital of your state and they have a Missing Persons Day, Missing Children's Day, I urge you to go. I think that is a worthwhile time spent. I really believe that. So I hope you will do that if you get a chance. Just to get the business stuff out of the way, I remind you, you can go to makeplayingcards.com. There's the playing cards. Who am I going to pick out first? Playing cards. Who? Jeff Nichols. Disappeared. Salt Lake City, June 8th, 2004. Who's next? Tammy Leppert. Disappeared Rockledge, Florida, July 1983. You can find these at makeplayingcards.com. Now you can actually do a search on there and find them. I got that all figured out. And you can also go to unfoundpodcast.com, go to the merchandise button, click on it, and you will find a link to the playing cards if you'd like to purchase them. So there you go. The Unfound playing cards, the first 52 cases that Unfound ever covered, ever featured on the show. And when I get to the next 52, you will probably see another deck of cards come out as well. Next, book, paperback book, the first volume. You can get it from Amazon.com, $10.99, or the ebook for $2.99. Working on volume 2. I thought it would be done by now and ready to be published. Not quite there yet. Too much going on, and I want to make sure it's right. And it is in the hands, volume 2 is in the hands of the proofreaders right now. And when they're done and I make the corrections and everything, then volume 2 will be out. And if that means I have to wait till 2018, that's when it'll be. I'm hoping it will be before that. Just no good plan goes unpunished. But I hope you will check this out. You can still order it for Christmas for somebody. You can go to Amazon.com. Please find them on there. Glendine Grant, Jesse Foster's mother, got hers a few days ago, and she put a picture of herself with holding her copy that I sent her, and I deeply appreciate her publicizing the book, and I don't mean to cover anybody up. Didn't mean to cover you up there, Rosemary, but there you are. Suzanne Lau, Jason Jolkowski, Jesse Foster, Rosemary Gayhart, Ben Padilla, and Kelly Rothwell. So there you go. And I haven't been talking a lot about Patreon. If you're not a Patreon supporter yet, I'd love for you to check that out, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. Haven't had a lot of time to talk about that because these news sections with so many things that are going on between the books, going up to Tallahassee. I've told you about everything going on with triblive.com, and things are going really well there. I just don't want it to run too long, and so things have to be dropped. And the Patreon mention has been getting dropped, but I want to do it right here. If you aren't a Patreon supporter, please, you can get in for $2 a month. I would deeply appreciate it. Once again, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. So I'm going to take a question, and this is a question that comes from a girl that she's, of course, a woman now, who I went to another elementary school, high school person. Being that she's from Western Pennsylvania and I'm from Western Pennsylvania, she asked me if I ever planned to cover the Sherry Mahan case. Maybe some of you in the rest of the country are not familiar with that case, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. It happened in 1985 in a place called Saxonburg, which was about, I'm going to say 25 minutes to a half hour from where I grew up. So I would have been, that was February 1985, I would have been 14 years old. She got off her school bus at the end of the day. She was, I don't know, 10 years old, 11 years old, 8, 9, somewhere in there, very young. And hello, Diane, welcome tonight. Hello, I know I sent you a couple messages within the last couple days. Hello, Diane, thanks for joining. But Sherry got off her bus and never made it to her house, which was a walk down a long driveway. I think the driveway was about 100 yards long, something like that. She never showed up. Now, the rest of you in the United States might be familiar with this case because there is a van that is connected to this case. It was a van with a skier on the side. And I believe that All Points Bulletin was sent out all over the United States to look for this van. It was never seen again. And, you know, there's been a lot of discussion over the years. Did the van exist? Did it exist? Did it even have anything to do with their disappearance? I think it's just strange that if there was a van there, that it was never seen again, because it was a fairly unique van. You don't see many cargo vans, like custom-made conversion vans with a skier painted on the side. But that van was never seen again, and Sherry was never seen again as well. Beth Ann, welcome tonight. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. So Sherry Mahan disappeared. It's a disappearance that is now 32 years old, and this girl that I went to high school with is asking me if I plan to cover it. I would like to. I would like to. The tough part, just to be open about this, is that there are some beliefs out there that possibly somebody within her family caused her disappearance, which, as you would then believe that the way I cover cases would make it a little difficult to cover it. Because you know how much I like to interview family members, and if there's a belief out there that a family member is involved, that makes things a little bit dicey. So, I just don't know what I'm going to do at this point. I would love to cover that case in 2018. I'm just going to have to figure out how to do it the right way. And really, I really have not been in contact with anybody regarding that case. And it might be a case that we cover for the work that I'm doing with triblive.com, but it hasn't been brought up yet. So I don't know about that. I don't know which direction we're going to go. My belief is that, let's put it this way. If the van existed, I don't believe it's from the Pennsylvania area. I don't believe that, although there is skiing in Pennsylvania, because it does snow and it has mountains, Pennsylvania isn't known as being a big ski destination. The van makes me believe that who was ever driving it might be from some other state, maybe New Jersey or New Hampshire, Vermont, which are much bigger skiing states, or even maybe going out west. Maybe it's even somebody from Colorado, Utah, someplace like that where skiing is very big. I just can't see somebody owning a van with a skier on the side from Pennsylvania. And it was never determined if the van had a Pennsylvania license plate or anything like that. So if the van existed, I don't believe that whoever was driving it was from the Pennsylvania area. There are people, though, who believe that maybe the van is complete figment of people's imaginations. So that's something else to ponder. So to Tara, who asked me that question, that's my answer, and I appreciate the question. Kenny, maybe the van was repainted. Kenny, totally possible. A perfectly reasonable belief. Then we have to start asking the question, well, who painted it in the first place? Did the person who owned it paint it with the skier on the side, then repaint it? I guess that's possible. That sounds like a lot of work, though. It sounds like a lot of work, maybe a little too complex for my case, but absolutely, if the person or people who were driving the van thought that would be, get them caught and they got it painted, very possible. But then the question is, well, why didn't somebody ever see the van beforehand? It's a complex case. There's not a lot of facts regarding it, but it's a complex case. Let's move it to the news, and this is big news. I'm retired, Kenny. You're a retired law enforcement officer. Thank you for joining me tonight. Thanks for joining us. In the news, this is a big news. This just broke today. The disappearance of Mike Williams was a case that was covered on the show Disappeared. Happened in the year 2000. And today, his remains were found. Today. And this coincides with a friend of his who has been rumored to be the rumor was that he was responsible for Mike's disappearance. If you don't know what happened, Mike Williams in the Panhandle of Florida allegedly went fishing and disappeared. The belief, though, is that his wife and possibly his best friend caused him to disappear. He was never seen again. And his friend and Mike's wife ended up getting married later. In addition, this same friend sold Mike his life insurance policy. So the friend, though, and Mike's wife ended up getting married. And then the friend, his name is Brian Winchester, tried to abduct his wife, Mike's ex-wife, and he got caught doing that. And he was just sentenced to 20 years in prison for this. Well, he's just going to jail now, and it's coinciding with Mike's remains being found. It's a big deal. Of course, there's always been the rumor that something happened to him. Most people did not believe that Mike Williams was alive anymore. His remains were found. However, as going live with this program, we don't know where that location is yet. We don't know if it was in that lake where he was supposed to be fishing that day or it was somewhere else. And I think we will probably learn a lot more about this case once they release that information. But what law enforcement did say is that in finding Mike Williams's remains, there is no doubt that he was murdered. I'm going to guess that he was shot. There was maybe a bullet hole in the body and maybe in the head or something that they found, and that's what leads them to believe that. But Mike Williams's remains were found today. And that was a case, once again, that has got a lot of attention, especially because Disappeared covered that case, I'm going to say 5 years ago, but he disappeared in 2000. But that is breaking news that his remains be found. And I hope that his family, I know there's no closure. They're always going to hurt, but now they don't have to wonder anymore. And, as you've heard on Unfound, the unknowing, the wondering, the not knowing what happened is probably the worst part that these families go through. And now these people know. So there's that. So I posted that in the group earlier today for discussion, and I hope you will now go check those news stories out for yourselves. Another news story, something that I need to follow up on that I talked about 3 weeks ago or whatever. I don't know if you've known this, but that Argentina submarine still hasn't been found. I think of Flight 370 when I had Jeff Wise on to talk about the disappearance of Flight 370. In fact, I talked to him today. I emailed him and he emailed me back. It just shows you how hard these things are to find. Even in this case, with a submarine, they kind of know where it went down. It's in water that's not as deep as the Indian Ocean, and they're still having problems finding it. So it's still missing. And what is it, 3 weeks since it went down, a month since it disappeared? And everybody seems to know in the general area where it is, can't find it. I urge you, I know I see a lot of people are watching tonight. If you have any questions that you want to ask me, please fire away. Please do that, because I didn't get a lot of questions before started the program tonight. So if anything comes to mind, please let me know. Let's get this done. Let's go back to another question. Speaking of which, I forgot to. I think it was Nan who sent me this question. Nan, what percentage of disappearances do I think are murders? What percentage do I think that people are people who ran away? What percentage of people who do I think committed suicide? She asked me to break down those percentages. The thing you have to understand about a question like this is nobody knows. These cases are unsolved. Now, maybe in like a Mike Williams case, you can kind of believe that he was murdered. But for most disappearances, you just don't know. People hold out hope that their loved one is not dead, that they just ran away or something like that. But I have to believe that a large majority of these people who disappeared are not with us anymore. Okay? And I believe that probably very few of them are suicides. I think that the percentages of them are suicides is a lower percentage than in the general population of people who we know commit suicides, where their bodies are found. I believe a large majority of these are murders. I just do. I think that that's what my gut tells me. I think a very small percentage of them are people who ran away and ran from one coast to the other to new identity, to change up their lives, or ran away from their life, however you want to put it. I think that's a very, very small percentage. And I think that there's a very small percentage of people who kind of misadventure, go into the woods. I guess the David Paulides scenario, people going into a national park or something, or a forest, and disappearing. I think that that's also a very low percentage of the entire disappearance population. I think a large majority of them, I'm going to say 75%, even bigger, even larger than that, were probably murdered. And their bodies were disposed in a way that they couldn't be found, or just haven't been found yet. That's just what my gut tells me. So that's where the percentages to me break down. To me, it's like at least 80% murders, and then you break the rest of it up between people running away, people being abducted and sex trafficked, as Kenny brings up here, some suicides, some people who died because of misadventure, getting out into the woods and getting lost, things like that. That's the other 20%. In fact, it might even be a lower percentage than that. So there you go. Rachel, thanks for joining us tonight. Kara asked, do you think the remains in Montana are the Skelton brothers? I'm doubtful, because if the father did it, then how did he get them to Montana? I have to admit, Kara, that I've seen some of the headlines, and I really can't tell you at this point. The Skelton brothers, although I know the name, I posted about it in the group. I've read a couple articles. I just don't know enough of the intricacies about that case to say one way or the other. I just don't. I would agree with you that it seems reasonable to me that you're doubtful. Because if the father did it, how to get into Montana? It's a very good question. I don't know. So I think that what you're saying there, that you're doubtful, I think that's perfectly reasonable. But I can't say either way. I guess I'm going to have to read up a lot more on it to give you an opinion on it. And probably by the time I do it, they'll probably figure out if these are the Skelton brothers or not. Now, if they are the Skelton brothers, I guess that brings up a whole new round of questions. If the father actually did it, or did somebody else do it? Did he get somebody to do it? Then we can have that conversation. And I want to have that conversation with you, Kara, and everybody else. I just don't know enough right at this second. Rachel says, I'm always late. No problem, Rachel. No problem at all. No problem at all. That's why I like to, my computer saves this file, then I send it to YouTube, and then you can catch up from the beginning. I can tell you, Rachel, that we started out the program with a little Die Hard. So there you go. Hannah, welcome. Welcome tonight. Kenny says drug trafficking. Yes, disappearance, drug trafficking is certainly a part of disappearances. I just don't know if would we put that in the abduction category, the murder category, the sex trafficking category. It's just hard to say, but there's no doubt that drugs and drug trafficking play a huge part in disappearances overall. I think I always bring up the number 40%. In Unfound, 40% of the disappearances are in some way connected to drugs. Whether it's a drug dealer disappearing, somebody doing drugs, somebody having an addiction. So I happen to agree with you, Kenny. Let's go to another, all intermingled. Exactly, Kenny. Let's go to another news item. And this was something that's kind of weird. Somebody must have been reading my mind or something. Was it you, Andrea? If you're on there, was it you who posted this story about Christine Martel-Kuhn, her remains were identified? I think it was you, Andrea. I know you're watching tonight. I saw you right at the top there. You had posted in the group about this case. If the rest of you don't know about it, let me tell you about it. There's a woman, Christine Martel-Kuhn, so Martell, and then last name Kuhn, Kuhn. She was found, her remains were found June 6th, 2006, so 11 and a half years ago, in San Mateo County, California. If you don't know where that is, that's the county that's immediately south from San Francisco. She disappeared. Now, what's interesting about this is that she disappeared from the Washington, D.C. area in 2005. Her remains were found off of Route 1. If you don't know what Route 1 is that really beautiful scenic road that goes right up the coast of the Pacific Ocean from L.A. the whole way up to San Francisco. A lot of car commercials are shot there on that road. Gives you great views, really beautiful. But her remains were found close to Route 1 in San Mateo County in California in 2006. Well, it's taken all this time for her to be identified. Finally, her DNA, there was a DNA hit, and it was her daughter. She had a daughter. Christine was 41 when she disappeared, but her daughter's DNA got put in the database, and Christine was finally identified. Now, the tough part about a case like, and I'm very high, I know the family was hoping that Christine was still alive, but just like in Mike Williams' case, at least they have some of the answers now. The answers they don't have is, how did she make it from Washington, D.C. to California? She didn't go by car. Did she get sex trafficked? Did she get abducted? Did she meet some guy? Did she jump in an 18-wheeler? Was she possibly murdered in the Washington, D.C. area and somebody took her the whole way to California? Her remains were so badly decomposed that they're never going to know. Unless they figure out that somebody comes forwards to say, yeah, I murdered her, they're never going to know what happened. But she has been identified. And I think what this illustrates is how hard it is to put your finger on what has happened in these cases. If we're going to get into a situation where people disappear and they're taken 3,000 miles away, so from Maine to Arizona, from the state of Washington to Florida, or from Alaska to Florida, you can understand how that would get exceedingly difficult to try to figure out what happened to a person. And then on top of that, that particular state taking DNA from the remains, and then another state finding out about it. Even with all the DNA technology and internet and everything else, this still took 11 years to solve, simply because it took a while, I guess, for the daughter's DNA to get taken or for it to get a hit. I don't know the specifics of that. So that's why I guess it pays to not exactly expect, if somebody disappears, to find them. It's a perfect example of this. Really a textbook case of remains being found 3,000 miles away. And I've been one of those guys, not recently because I'm too busy, but back in the day, I'd get on the Charlie Project and try to line up those people with the unidentified remains on NamUs or wherever else. And you're always looking for, people who disappeared in the same area. Christine's case shows you that that's probably not always the best thing to do. It's a logical place to start, but you have to be open-minded to the point that if you're looking at unidentified remains in Arizona, you better be looking at disappearances in Maine or any other country, Canada, Mexico, who knows. In fact, I can tell you there's a unidentified remains case in Las Vegas right now that's called Sandstone Doe. You can look that up. Just do a Google for it. Google it, and I'm pretty sure that it's a guy. This guy is not an American. I've convinced myself that this guy, his remains are from Canada, from Europe, from Russia, something like that. So look that up if you'd like, Sandstone Doe, and see what you think. Please get back to me on that. Carly, welcome tonight. Welcome. So that was Christine Martel-Kuhn. Her family now has answers as to what happened to her, although they don't know if she was it natural causes, was it the elements, was she murdered? They're never going to know, but at least they have found her. Interesting case. I'm going to answer one more question, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the two cases that we will be releasing this Friday for Unfound. Let me just get to a couple statements there yet. Andrea, I think a lot of our identified here, San Diego, are from Mexico and vice versa. Andrea, that would make a lot of sense. That would certainly make a lot of sense, and that would certainly make them tough to identify. True. And Carly, hi Ed, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Carly, thanks. The only thing was about 15 minutes before I started this, I started sneezing and getting the sniffles, but it seems I'm feeling much better now. So I haven't had to sneeze or anything. But Carly, thanks for asking. How are you? What's going on where you are, Carly, tonight? I think Karis told me she's wrapping presents while watching tonight. Hey, whatever floats your boat. One more question. Why do listeners latch on to certain cases? I have no idea. I know this, people ask me this privately. I think I've been asked this question and, using different words before since starting this Facebook live show. I can't tell you why the Marmura case has all the people surrounding it and all the different cliques and everything else, whereas a case like Dow Phillips's that I just covered in Tennessee hasn't gotten a lot of attention. Maybe it's because Dow isn't on NamUs, and I'm going to try to help his wife Missy get on there and on Charlie Project. That could be. I don't know why the general public latches on to certain cases. I have no idea. I don't know. It would be easy to say, like in Mara Murray's case, because she was an attractive young woman. There are a lot of attractive young women whose cases don't get any attention at all. So that can't be it. Is it because of the mysterious circumstances because of Mara Murray's case? Well, as I think I've shown over the last year, there are a lot of unknown cases that have just facts that are just as strange as Mara's. I don't know. If I ever get an answer, all of you will be the first to find out. Trust me. I don't know. I'm no psychologist necessarily, although sometimes I think I have to play one on the program and be one. I'm not a sociologist. I just don't know. Mr. Carly says, I'm great. Thanks for asking. You're also wrapping presents. Okay, well, great. Kenny, certain people are watching certain cases. That's true. Law enforcement officers looking for clues. That could be. That's probably a little part of it. But I know in the last year, I've just watched, certain things happen. For example, the Sherry Papini case. Now, of course, she didn't disappear. She was found. That caught a lot of people's attention because of the circumstances. The Terry Beavers murder in Texas that is still unsolved. It'll be, what, 2 years this April. That got a lot of people's attention because, you know, you get to see the person who probably did it on video. So, you know, it's just tough to say. It's just tough to say. All I can tell you with me is that I go out and try to find people. As you know, Emily, who works with me, goes out and finds people. Anthony, who's appeared on the program a couple times, he is, of course, connected me with some people, and I'm very thankful for all of them. I just interview the people that we can reach. And it doesn't matter to me necessarily if the case is popular or not. In fact, I like the cases that are a little bit unknown. That's just the where my mind goes. But I will talk to anybody. Sherelle, why don't you cover more missing kids than adults? The tough thing, Sherelle, about covering kids is I think no different than anything else. You just have to get the people to talk to you, and we just haven't had a lot of success. I did do the disappearance of Debbie Lowe, who was only, 12 years old, but that was a case from the 1970s, and her sister was on the program. Danielle Bell, I mean, she was, 14? That was a few weeks ago. It just depends. It just, we're always looking for cases. And the tough part, Sherelle, if I may say, about the disappearances of children, I brought this up earlier when I was talking about Sherry Mahan. In many children's disappearances, there's a lot of time the suspicion that the parents did it. All right? And that makes a job like mine very difficult. That's not always the case, and I don't like to go on rumors or anything like that. But when children disappear, I mentioned Trenton Duckett's disappearance once again right at the beginning of the show if you missed it. That's a case where it's believed that his mother, the popular opinion, I should say, it is that his mother did something to him. Well, if his mother was still alive and I wanted to cover his disappearance, how would I go about doing that if Melinda Duckett was still alive? Would I interview her? I would, if she was alive, I'd love to talk to her, but would I get any truth out of her? Probably not. So you just don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Melinda was guilty in that case or not, but it just makes covering these cases objectively very difficult when children disappear. That's all I can say. Diane, thank you. Thank you, Diane, for the kind words. Cheryl, so I hope that answers your question. Cheryl, talk to anybody. If I would gladly do a month's worth, 2 months worth of missing children. It's just the point of reaching their parents, them feeling comfortable talking to me, us going through the details thoroughly, as you know I do. And, children's cases are, young children's cases, are particularly sad. And so that maybe has something to do with it as well. There's that. Sherelle, so I hope that answers your question, but I will talk to any parent of a missing child anytime. It's just, once again, it's tough reaching them. Hannah, do you do podcasting full-time now? Hannah, I've been doing podcasting full-time since I started Unfound in September of 2016. This is all I do. It's all I do. That's the way it's been, and it looks like that's the way it's going to continue into 2018. A lot of great things have happened to Unfound in the last couple months. With triblive.com, a great opportunity for me to work with a really great media organization and great people. Have more books coming out. I told you I had a conversation recently with a TV producer. So 2018 could be a really, really big year. But to answer your question specifically, I've been doing this show full time since I started in September of 2016. And people ask, and I still do, I do this full time, and I still don't have time to listen to a lot of other shows out there. It is a full-time deal trying to find people. I spend a lot of time on the phone. I spend a lot of time reading. I continue to work with guests who have already been on the program, making phone calls for them, emailing for them, things that you guys never hear about. So, and then there's turning out an episode every week. But yes, full time. So let's get to the cases for this week. We have two. I'm going to say it again. Two cases this week. The disappearance of Bill Underhill. He was 20 years old. He disappeared in Minneapolis in 1969. He went to a party, and then he walked away from it, was never seen again. This is a good study of the late 1960s in the United States. We're going to talk about what was going on in the United States at that time and what Bill and his friends were talking about at that party before he disappeared. Vietnam was very much on their mind. And they talked about, some of them worried about getting drafted. Some of them were talking about going to Canada. Some of them were talking about committing suicide. And then right after this case, right after this party, Bill disappears. He was living at home at the time, going to the University of Minnesota, and disappeared. And the most probably the really interesting, out of what you wouldn't expect part is that Bill's family for 40-some years thought they knew everything about that night. And then a woman came forward within the last couple years to say that she was Bill's girlfriend at the time. This is a girlfriend that hardly any of them knew about, and she alleges that she talked to Bill on the phone that night that he disappeared, after he left the party. So, very interesting case. I think there's at least a decent chance that Bill is still out there. Of course, he would be 60-some years old now, but that's the one disappearance, and the title of it is called The Way It Was, and I'm kind of ripping off Walter Cronkite for that, but you will hear me start that episode out with detailing some things that were going on in early March 1969, which is when Bill Underhill disappeared from Minneapolis. So Bill Underhill is one case. The other case is a much more recent case, but it's also a 20-year-old male. His name is Tyler Stice, S-T-I-C-E. He disappeared in Kingman, Arizona, which is up there in the northwest corner of Arizona, in June of 2016. So these two guys, Bill Underhill, Tyler Stice, same age but separated by 47 years and about 1,700 miles. But in both cases, it kind of seems like they walked away from their lives. And the reason that Tyler's is so interesting to me is I know Kingman very well. I used to live in Las Vegas, and I worked on a TV show that was a stunt show, motorcycles jumping and things like that, that was shot at the airport in Kingman. And between January 2000, man, I was just a young kid then. I wasn't even 30 years old yet. Wow. I spent a lot of time at the Kingman Airport back at that time working on this show that was shot there. And so I stayed some nights in Kingman, Arizona at the time. And then 2005 to 2009, I actually had a job in Las Vegas that sent me to Kingman probably about once a month, if not more often than that. So I'm very, very familiar with this town of Kingman, very familiar. And to drive to Phoenix, you have to go through Kingman. So there's that as well. Tyler missed work that day. In fact, he skipped work the day before he disappeared and then missed work the day of his disappearance. And his car was found in a mountain camping spot a few days later. This episode is going to give us a chance to talk about dogs and their use in finding missing people, of tracking people. Because what you're going to hear in this case is that the dogs were sent to his car where his car was parked, And they followed his scent from there down to this camping area and then out to the main road. The dogs tell a very specific story about what happened to Tyler after he parked his car there. They would lead you to believe that he walked away from his car and then eventually made it out to this main road. But we have to ask the question, can dogs always be believed? Are we going to believe them in this case? Are they right? Are they wrong? Do we know? And it will be up to all of you to make that decision. And Stan, welcome. I know you're getting in a little late, but that's fine. This is all going to be posted later on YouTube and on Facebook, and you can watch this from beginning. You might want to try to watch it again and go back and watch it because I started off this episode with Die Hard. So there's that. But in Tyler's case, are we to believe the dogs that he got picked up, or did something else happen? Or were the dogs right? Because dogs are animals just like us. They make mistakes. They have their own interests and fascinations and everything else. So is it either that? Did Tyler, I don't know, did somebody else park his car there? Did he walk off into the desert? All of you will have to determine whether you want to believe the dogs or not in this case. I should have said in Bill Underhill's episode, I interview his sister Mary Underhill, and then in Tyler Stice's case, I interview his sister Jessica Curtis. And Jessica is also doing some excellent work in Arizona with prevention. She raises awareness to keep young children from drowning in pools. That's an interest. It's something that is very relevant to her life because of some of the circumstances that she went through. Raising awareness about how pools can be dangerous to young children. So we talk about that a little bit at the end of the interview as well. Her name is Jessica Curtis. She is Tyler's sister. And Stephanie, getting tuned in late. We only have a couple minutes to go, but better late than never. Stephanie, thanks for tuning in tonight. And Tyler Stice's episode is going to be called High Desert Hounding because Kingman is in the high desert of Arizona. And dogs, hounds, play a part in the story. And also because hounding is another way to say a relentless search. And that is what Jessica and her family are doing. They're being very relentless in trying to figure out what happened to Tyler back in June of 2016. So we have Bill Underhill, The Disappearance, 1969, episode called The Way It Was. And Tyler Stice, 20-year-old from Kingman, Arizona, disappeared in June of 2016. And his episode is called High Desert Hounding. And Kenny, if you got to go, totally understand. We're going to be signing off here in a couple minutes. Thank you for joining us tonight, Kenny. Deeply appreciated. Thank you for the questions in the comments. Thank you. Does anybody else? That's all I got for tonight. That's all the outline that I have. Anybody else have any questions, comments, or anything? I hope that everybody has a beautiful Christmas. I did my shopping yesterday online. It's kind of easy for me because I live so far away from all of my family members. I just send them gift certificates, so I can crank it out pretty fast. So I got it all done yesterday. And I know some of you said that you're wrapping presents tonight, but I've talked to a couple of my friends who said they don't even have all their shopping done yet, which is amazing. I always think that I'm the last person to get my shopping done. Not so this year. But if there's nothing else, longest show yet. I guess that makes sense, being that we had to talk about 2 cases tonight and had some great questions, great topics for tonight's discussion. I hope you enjoyed. I just want to tell you that this is my favorite time of the week. Besides interviewing the guests, of course, for the episodes, this is my favorite time of the week. Talking to some of you, seeing what you're thinking, you guys making time out of your busy Wednesday night or evening for this program. Please spread the word that this happens every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. I really, really enjoy this, and I thank you for all tuning in Merry Christmas to you, Dee Dee. Becca, Merry Christmas to you. I didn't see you tune in there. I'm sorry if I missed you, Becca. Typical, yes, Stephanie. I'm certainly a typical guy. And with that, Merry Christmas to all of you. I'll talk to you this time next week. Of course, before then, you will hear me for 2 episodes this Friday. And until then, I hope you all take care, drive safely, have a beautiful Christmas. I'm signing off. Good night.